All right, welcome to everyone. It's going to give everyone a few more minutes to come in to our next installment of our LifeGuides Connect. I appreciate everyone piling in. We've got a really good conversation that we're about to jump into concerning caregiving, and we're going to share our lived experience as caregivers, as supporters of other human beings. So just give everyone a few more moments to trickle in before we get started. And while everyone is trickling in, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Dave Hester, leader of the Guides community here at LifeGuides. And my background is in cognitive neuroscience. I bring a wealth of information as well as experience on supporting individuals with challenging disabilities, as well as supporting children and adults with autism. And I'm excited to be here. I'm going to introduce our wonderful guides who are joining us for this session of our LifeGuides Connect in just a moment. And it looks like we have a fairly good crowd today. So thank you all for signing up and continuing to share the knowledge. That's what we're about: sharing the knowledge, sharing information. And I always ask for just one piece of one request, which is, if you're watching us on the archives or on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Share with your friends if you found this information helpful to you, because sharing is caring. That's an easy kind of turn of phrase to throw out there. All right, we'll get started in just a moment. Wow, just looking at all the people coming in. Thank you. All right, well, let's go ahead and start. I will begin with a quick introduction of the two guides who are joining me today. So first, we have Isabel G, and we appreciate her being here today.
Hello.
Isabel is a mother of 4. She's a grandmother of 3. She first began caregiving when she was 10 years old, and her mother was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. From that moment on, her passion of caring for others only continued to grow. She began her professional caregiving career over a decade ago, and she has guided close friends and family, both as a birth doula and a death doula. I like that. They kind of connect, don't they? Isabel has gained much experience to help other people advocate for themselves, and her Life Guides expertise includes aging parenting, as well as caregiving, living with an illness, grief, and death and dying. Thank you so much for being here today, Isabel.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Fantastic. And also joining us for a second time, we appreciate our people who continue to come back to our LifeGuides Connect and share their wisdom and knowledge, and that is Christopher G. Christopher G holds a Master's of Science degree in occupational therapy and psychology, and is a holistic health practitioner focused on regenerative solutions unique to your life path. He divides his time in Costa Rica and New Mexico, building community and integrating principles of biodynamic agriculture and somatic repattering techniques. So one thing that Christopher is always fascinating and lovely for me is that he has served 13 years in the Army and he's also been a traveling musician. His Life Guides experience includes navigating the VA, which, if you're a veteran out there, or if you know someone who's a veteran, it's a great resource, someone to connect with on that topic. He's also big in our self-acceptance topic, which he's also helped me with. I have no shame in saying that he's also one of my guides. One of the other pieces that Christopher G is key in is the power of gratitude and aging parents and more. Thank you so much, Christopher G, for being available today.
It's my honor, my pleasure to be with you all. It's a great privilege to speak on these topics and to share these ideas that are so vital in these times as generations continue to age and we continue to bear witness and participate. So thank you.
Fantastic. So getting started, let's jump into the conversation. Some people, like most, like to define things before we get into it. So let's define what caregiving means to you. And I'll go to you first, Isabel. What does caregiving mean to you?
Well, caregiving to me really means being there for somebody else in their time of need, regardless of what that looks like, because it could mean many different things for many different people. there's many different stages of caregiving also. It's not just our elderly, but it's being there for somebody in the time that they need help, and sometimes they don't know that they need it, and or don't know how to navigate through it. So caregiving to me is just being there for somebody else in the moments that they need it.
Outstanding, outstanding. Christopher, how about you?
Well, when you asked the question, Dr. Dave, the first thing that came to mind was the word caretaking. And in the past, I had heard that term, I'm a caretaker. And how do we contrast that with caregiving? Well, they're likely the same thing, but words are really important, as we know. Caregiving, to me, just like Isabel put, is our ability to be present with the person who is requiring our attention in the moment. And there are different times throughout the life cycle where different qualities of care are required. And each one of those stages, from my experience, has required deeper introspection, deeper boundary setting, and a clear inner compass on not only our communication ability, but our willingness to admit when we don't have answers and to be okay with asking questions and communicating within a network. So it's an extremely dynamic process, but extremely rewarding all the same.
No doubt, it is rewarding, and just to layer on, continuing to expand the idea of what caregiving is. I see caregiving as, just like you said, that attention, that level of support that you are giving entirely to someone else, just for them to, have a better quality of life, more well-being, just to help them. Like, that is what caregiving means to me, and it comes in many forms, I believe. Typically, when people hear caregiving, they typically think of someone who may have challenges just doing normal things like eating. But there's also, I believe, an element of caregiving with people who are fully functional, and they still, need some sort of support to help them through. Because let's be honest, living as a human can be challenging, complex, and a bit quirky at times. So it's important for us to have community. So that actually brings me to another question: is when we talk about community, you're both from diverse communities. So how has community informed your caregiving style, or even some of the practices that you bring to caregiving? Isabel, let's start with you.
Well, my community, they offer many, forms of help. Not that many people know about it, and that's the difficult part. But there's food pantries, there's resources of helping fill out paperwork, there's resources for helping get home care. There's resources to help getting supplies that are needed in the home that you're paying out of pocket for, but don't necessarily need to. So there's those resources that are available, but hard if you don't even know that they're there. So my community is really big on having those open and ready and helping for people. And I feel like there's a gap, and I think that's where we come in as caregivers.
Wow, fantastic. I didn't think about that. So I'm already learning something just about the importance of letting people know about available resources that that they have available to them. Same thing, over to you, Christopher. Like, where do you see community's role, in caregiving?
It seems to be essential. We have to have these support networks. Otherwise, we encounter things like compassion burnout, and we go through processes that we feel, or we might feel unsupported. And I'll just reflect on my personal experience. I spent half the year in Costa Rica. I'm here with my father, who requires special needs from a brain injury he had back in 2020. And it's so interesting because here in Costa Rica, the culture is very different in the fact that there's hardly no assisted living facilities. The families take in those that need care, and it's basically that unit, that nuclear unit, that's providing the care. So here I was provided this opportunity to really build something from the ground up and to really assess all that is within the community that could possibly support my father. And it really takes knowing who requires the care and figuring out what are the biggest things that they require just to function. And from my experience, it just like you said, Dr. Dave, it's all about the quality of our attention, and that is the most valuable thing that we can offer is our attention to another or to others. And so it's been a process of inquiring within the community in respect to the needs that, in this case, my father requires. But since we're branching out and now we're seeing more people needing care, it's diversifying, and now we can begin to discover and explore compatibility, because, as you know, not all caregivers are going to be compatible to the one needing care, and that has to be honored as well. So I would say networking, communicating, and being willing to just be vulnerable and asking and admitting maybe that you don't know where something is, and a lot of times the answer, or at least the doorway, will open up for you.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said. It reminds me of, so there's many resources for caregivers, but I think there's care.com, I believe is one where you can go and find someone, and it's important for you to find someone who's a fit and who can work with you and who is also culturally competent and culturally they provide culturally appropriate care, because our culture kind of informs how we process, how we accept help. I'll just share that when I, for example, was supporting a Filipino family, they made me food, and typically I don't eat other people's food, just because of past experiences, but because in their culture it was a big thing for them to make me dinner. And so I sat and I ate with them, and that meant so much to them because that's a part of their culture. She kind of got on me though. She was like, "Hey, Dave, I made this for you. You're gonna eat it." And I said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm going to eat it." So where does culture play a role when you are looking for caregiving and or providing caregiving?
Hmm. Well, it's really about your degree of comfort, I would say, and the fact, Dr. Dave, that you were willing to accept that offer, knowing the cultural sensitivities, and knowing maybe in the past we were told, don't accept things from our clients, and that whole
Hmm.
boundary, which is understandable, but it is a cultural boundary that gave you the ability to kind of traverse that and to kind of you know bring both ends of the bridge together, so to speak. So, and that can also elicit times of maybe feeling like, well, I'm not so comfortable in accepting this. Well, how can I communicate that in a sensitive manner that takes full responsibility for your experience? And that's just another aspect of being willing to be vulnerable. And a lot of times the hard part about caregiving, uh, and it's also an opportunity, is to communicate what you're comfortable with and what you're willing to provide. And that will also provide the family and those receiving the care that potential to maybe just give more respect on, like, okay, this is where a person's coming from and what they're willing to perform or not perform, or accept or not accept. And it could actually deepen the connection because of your willingness to be so uh, radically responsible, if you will.
Absolutely. Isabel, I kind of want to take a little bit of a turn, just based on some of the discussions that we had before the session. And I want to ask you directly, like, what does your Hispanic heritage, mean to you in relation to, how you show up, for others? What does that mean to you?
Well, a lot of it has to do with already the idea of we take care of our own. We take care of our elderly, we take care of our family that are hurt, that need food, that need clothes. We are there to support them. Um, that's part of my heritage a lot, is we take care of our elderly. And so when I'm coming into a home for caregiving, or speaking to anybody about it, it comes from that place, right? So it comes from the place of I'm here to help you in any way, to show you that this is possible,
Mm.
that what you're going through is normal, you're not alone. definitely not the only one, because it can get very lonely, when you're caring for somebody, full time or even part time. You tend to isolate yourself in those moments, and so I come in with the heart of family. And I would tell all my clients, I will remember you forever. I will never not remember you. You made such an impact on my life that you are my family now. And to the point where, they've given me keys to their house because they want me to be able to come and check on their home when they're gone, or we haven't spoken in months, but simple text messages are how are you doing and are you okay? Show is where like I said, I come from this family oriented heritage, and so I feel like that's how I come into it. And so coming into that dynamic, I'm able to be very open with them, like a family member. Oh, I don't really like to be hugged or touched. I've learned from bad experiences, not to be too open with certain gestures, because people just don't. Some cues are just not there. Those cues of
Hmm.
I'd kind of or just the simple fact of you're trying to be professional. But
Right.
then as you when you come into them already showing that your family, you feel like their family, um it grows. It grows into that respect of, can I give you a hug now? Or can I feed you today? Or, can I give you this advice? And this is where I feel like not only do I win as a caregiver, coming in showing them how I feel like somebody should be taken care of, family wise and family oriented wise, that um, it develops a great relationship. It develops openness. It develops this bond of, you can tell them something that may not be easy, but because of that relationship or that mindset that you come in with, it is, it becomes not as difficult or not as embarrassing or not as hard.
Right. And what you mentioned there is the important piece I heard is building that relationship and building those healthy boundaries. I think it's important sometimes in caregiving. I've seen where caregivers can become enmeshed in a family where they're completely involved from everything to decisions to what they're going to eat for
Mhm.
dinner that night. And those boundaries, when they're blurred, it can become difficult, to one to detach or even to take a break. So speaking of taking a break, it reminds me that burnout is highly prevalent in the caregiving community. So let me ask you, Christopher, what are ways of caring for oneself to avoid that compassion burnout that can happen for caregivers?
I would say self-advocacy is number one, and learning how to advocate for our own needs in terms of our ability to function at our highest is paramount. And coming from a people-pleasing culture and a lot of codependent and meshed raising, just wanting people to be happy because we love people so much, it is can be really difficult to say, you know what, I need to take a few days. I will be back. I promise, and communicate that openly. And there may be some initial disappointment, and that's okay. We often, I mean, we can't manage people's expectations, but we can communicate that sensitivity and that awareness of, okay, if I can't be here for the next 2 or 3 days because I need to recharge and be alone, I have backup coverage set up. Everything's gonna be smooth, and if you need any help, you can reach out on this number. It's just having a plan and some structure in place so that they don't feel like they're being left high and dry, and you are in a place of self-honor and preservation.
Fantastic, fantastic. I see the responses flying. So I think you touched a couple people's heart out there.
Lots
Um,
of hearts, yeah.
yeah, lots of hearts. I love to see it. Thanks for the interaction, everyone. Isabel, same thing to you. How do you prevent burnout when typically for caregivers we're always on, especially if you're in home. If you're in home taking care of a family member, how can you prevent that burnout?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure that everybody knows that it happens to everybody, um, and for the most part, um, it happens without you knowing it's happening.
Hmm.
It can come in pretty quickly and you not even realize that it has happened. You've missed doctor's appointment, dentist appointments, you've canceled meetings, you've canceled friends, you've canceled all kinds of things, and you don't even know it. Um, and 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 when it gets to that point, it can you big things can happen. You can get really sick. Big things can happen to you. And so the the way I have learned to go around it, because I did it to myself, especially in the beginning, when my father passed away, I just threw myself into everybody because I felt like I had something that I could give somebody else, and I just needed something to do, to just be in the front, instead of what was really going on, the sadness and all that stuff. So that's what I mean about it creeping up and you not really knowing that it's happening. Because I really didn't know that I did that to myself. I was working 6 a.m., no, 5:30 to 7 p.m., 5:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I didn't, I just threw myself in there. I was like, you need help, I can help you. You need 10 minutes, I got 10 minutes somewhere. I didn't leave lunch, I didn't leave breakfast, I didn't even leave time for the bathroom. I had food at clients' houses, because again, you feel this need to people please, like Christopher said. So what I had to learn, and I got help with life guides. One of my guides that I talked to a lot was helping me understand that it's okay, and you need to tell yourself that it is okay for you to take a break, that you're not hurting somebody else for taking a break, that you're not disappointing somebody else for taking a break. And if you don't take a break, what's going to happen to you if you don't, and what's going to happen to the people that you're taking care of. So if you care so much for somebody else that you feel like you need to be there all the time to take care of them, then take care of yourself too, because you are the person that are doing what you want in their lives. You are the person that are helping. You're the person that's putting your time, your effort, and your love into somebody. But if you don't put that time and effort into love into yourself, how are you going to give it to somebody else?
Absolutely.
And just learning to be okay with spending a day drinking coffee doing absolutely nothing.
Oh, those days are always needed, and I think we need to embrace it. And when I say do nothing, or when for me, what doing nothing means is really doing nothing, not social media, not doing side projects, like really just sitting with oneself. And breaks are so important. I think we don't talk as much about breaks. Typically, and I'm speaking from my experience, my breaks consisted of shoveling whatever fuel I can put in my mouth, whether it be like a, salad or something like that, whatever fuel I need while working on a project, handling a call. And I'm like, oh, I'm on my break. Really, I'm not. I'm on. I'm going. Um, I'm thinking about my wife, because she has this business called Everyday Self Care Queen, and she tells people all the time, self care is not selfish. And it's such a simple statement, but it's not. Yet we are sometimes made to feel that, oh, you're taking a break, this person needs you, or this person's expecting you to be there. If you're showing up broken, it's kind of hard to fix someone else. And I think we have to have those conversations more often, that we need breaks.
If I could mention
Yep.
just one thing on that
Go for it.
one aspect of all of this that was a big paradigm shift for me in not only caring for my father, but managing a caregiving endeavor, was the fact that as caregivers, not just caregivers, but as human beings, we are responsible to other people. We cannot be responsible for them. As dynamic as that may sound, there are people who require extreme care, and we're still in a place of responding to their needs. So that opened up this whole doorway of realizing everybody's experience is their own. And as much as we would like to maybe manage their experience in order for us to feel a certain way, if that's assured, satisfied, complimented, that's okay. But it does like lay the foundation for like some codependent thresholds that I've come to experience within myself. Was as much as I wanted my father to be that productive, going out and making things happen and living his life just like he did my entire life, well, his path has shifted a little bit. And now I can only respond to the changes that occur in his life, and relinquishing the belief that I was somehow responsible for not only the changes in his life, but his reactions, his emotional states, everything that coincides with being a dynamic human being. I saw where the trap was. And so it was this point of liberation and recognizing like the only thing that I can be responsible for is my own emotional state. And that, in a sense, set me free.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful that you were able to find that freedom. There was actually a question in the chat of dovetailing a little bit on what you're talking about, which is speaking to the feelings or fear that if you do take a break, that the situation or the person you come back to may be worse than they were when you left them. I think this is a great comment because there's a responsibility that we have as caregivers to, we want to see the people we're supporting thrive or do better. One thing I've learned through all of my clinical support and as well as clinical dealings in the profession is that people go up and down. There's no one line of success. And so if someone, for example, is in a worse shape than when we left, I like to assess, what does that really mean? Is that measurable from if they can complete, certain psychological assessments? Can they write down how they're feeling? I like doing that. For some people who have that ability, I'll ask, can you, give me a 1 through 5, how you're feeling? Because they may not be able to communicate that. But I'd like to hear more from both of you. Maybe let's start with you, Isabel, about how can you release that, if we're going to use a term there, release that judgment, that you have to be there for someone. And if they're worse than they were before, that's somehow your responsibility.
So as a caregiver, we take so much onto ourselves. We can take on, like you said, Dave, sometimes you've seen where caregivers are even planning meals. And that's what a lot of, that I do on my side actually is, I'm planning a lot of meals for people. But as to what we're saying, that's what I was about to say. Hold on, let me get it back.
Okay, it's in the ether. You can just pull it back out. I can't believe I use ether. But
It
okay.
is. Okay, so the one thing that I can say for sure is that people, like you said, go up and down. And we really can't, we would like to think that we are a big part of them going up, and we are, we are. We help them, we may help them thrive. We see them getting better. We're like, oh man, today's a good day. They ate today, or they sat up today, or, anything today that wasn't like yesterday. And then you take a break and then you're like, dang, like they said, the fear of you coming back to them being worse. But in reality, you have to tell yourself, if you were there, it probably still would have happened. Maybe not the same way, but in some form, it would have happened. And it wouldn't have impacted you the same way, right? Because you were there to see it happen. You saw it flow through and happen. So it wasn't this big shock and all, like if you were to leave and come back. So we have to tell ourselves, this might have happened if I wasn't here. And it's okay. And we can't, I call this survival mode. Because a lot of the times when we're doing this type of stuff and we're feeling bad because a person has declined when we've left, the person is going to decline even so. We all come to this point of ending at some point. So I can tell you the one thing that a nurse told me as soon as my father passed away, and I was shocked. I mean, I could see what was happening, but I couldn't see what was happening at the same time. Like I knew my father was really sick. I knew the doctors told me he only had 2 weeks. This was the third week in. So I'm like, still in denial. No, no, the tests are gonna come back. They're gonna be like, no, things. So we're in survival mode. We're in denial. We think that if we bring them this or we do this, they're gonna get better. And even if we see a small increase, it's a win for us. It's a big win for us. So when something happens and they pass away, it's like all I did was leave to go take a shower and buy food. And while I was gone, they passed away. How is this even possible? They were fine. They were fine a minute ago. Right. And so that shock hits you of, I didn't do enough. I shouldn't have left. I should have stayed here. I shouldn't have been trying to take a shower at this time and in place. I shouldn't have been trying to rest in this time. What was I thinking? You know, anything. And what this nurse did for me is what I do for everybody that I can, is to walk up to them and say, you did everything you could. And because of that, they made it this far. There was nothing more that you could do. You did everything right. It is okay. You're going to be okay. And
That's
just the
beautiful.
utter help that you see in the face change, they're like, okay, I can just be in this moment. If I could just bottle that up and send it to people, I would.
Go ahead, Chris. It looks like you have something to add there.
It just made me think of what the nurse told me after my mom passed away a couple of years ago. And the same thing, I'm doing all of these modalities and treatments and things that are what I believe helping her. The nurses were astounded that she lasted longer than 24 hours, and she actually lasted 7 days on hospice before she left. And after she took her last breath and she was reunited with her mother and father, which I had the supreme gift of witnessing, which I believe was one of the dearest gifts that she left me in this incarnation, was the nurse said, if it could have happened another way, it would have happened another way. And since it didn't, it's divine. And I had to sit with that, just like you were saying, like bottle that up and just hold it so closely, because as badly as I wished I could have controlled the situation, there was nothing I could have done to have prevented the transition that at that time her soul was ready to take and to embark upon. And it was a blessing that I was present when that all happened. And the fact that the nurse could be very, very logical. I mean, it makes sense logically, right? If it could have happened, it would have. And since it didn't, it's divine. So we're good on that. And that depth of reconciliation within my emotions was really profound.
And we need that. We need those moments, those words, working with people. There's this book by Stephen King called Dr. Sleep, which is a sequel to his book, The Shining. And in Dr. Sleep, Daniel Torrance, the lead character, works in hospice and he helps people transition. Now, of course, this is a work of fiction, so I do recognize that. But in it, he would sit with them, and they would have everything from last wishes that they would wish they could do, or regrets that they weren't able to do, and he would just hold their hand and say, "Whatever you're feeling, you're not alone. I'm with you." And just by that person kind of feeling that support, someone there, someone just trying to provide whatever kind words they could, they would pass on. And in that story, he then saw them as ghosts because it's Stephen King, so supernatural. And that he would talk to them and converse with them, and get the understanding that they were doing well. So speaking of doing well, we're all working to help each other, help family members, and sometimes we have to caregive our family. You're talking about your mother, excuse me, for you, Christopher, working with your father.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that there's a difference in supporting your family than doing it on a professional level, or is it all kind of the same? Does it all work together?
That's a great question. At this point, I've had to wear several hats, and sometimes simultaneously. Sometimes even though I'm 40 years old, my father still sees me as the 14-year-old that is, has a mouth that won't stop and is blah blah blah. The whole story. It's very very sentimental. And then there's times when I have to put on basically the occupational therapy cap and put on the detective cap and work directly through the caregivers, which he's bonded really closely with. And there's been some challenges within the relationships that as he continues his aging, he's still a man and he still has urges and desires. And how do you go about navigating those? I'm still working on that, honestly. I don't have an answer. I put this out to the community as a point of conversation because it's something that will continue to come up for all of us. So yeah, I think it's wearing multiple hats and being willing to ask questions and kind of play the detective and realize that at any given moment we're doing the best that we can, and there's always room for growth. And just acknowledging that can bring a deeper sense of humility to us that we're here walking this path. We're all walking each other home. The paths may be different, but the destination is the same. And exactly what you said, Dr. Dave, about just holding someone's hand and assuring them that you are here, you are not alone, that can be the portal for which they feel safe enough to finally let go in a state of peace. And that's what I wish for all of us, truthfully.
Wonderfully said.
That's a lot of heart. All thank you.
Yeah. I think another piece that you're talking about is just the complexity around caregiving. So, I want to ask you, Isabel, just to talk about some of the complexities of caregiving a family member. Christopher mentioned that, his father sees him as the, 14-year-old boy, and that can make for complex interaction. So how do you navigate those complexities when caregiving a family member?
I mean, that's the funnest part, I think, caregiving for a family member. It can be all kinds of dynamics. It can be fun and it can be really, really hard because I've learned that however you live comes out a lot how you are in the end. More so when you're older, it just does. There's no rhyme or reason. Sometimes the mind will change and that's a mind thing and they will be something completely different, but a lot of times it's what they were when they were so a lot of it is knowing who they were, right? A lot of it is knowing how they did things, how they ran, how they like things. Um my grandmother is a sweets person, and you can't take that away from her. And I don't think, I mean, it's not kind of, we have to, right? Because she's got diabetes, but at the same time, you can't just take some of those normalcies away from them, because like Christopher said, they still see us as little kids and we can't tell them no. Like we cannot tell them, no, dad, you need to take a break. No does not exist. No should never exist in our language as caregivers either. So because it's too much of I don't know, like not disrespectful, but they're like, I am an adult. You are not going to tell me that I can't do this or I can't do that or I should do this. You are just a child. You are just a child, And so the vocabulary needs to change a lot of, okay, that's fine. I'm still your baby, but you took care of me. I think it's my turn to take care of you. Or you did this for me and I'm so happy to do this for you, even though they're probably arguing with you about how you put their shoe on wrong or how their sock feels or how they don't want to change because they're embarrassed of the accident that they made, but they're a grown adult. And if you tell them you need to change, you've wet yourself, that doesn't work. It just embarrasses them. And you just can't come at it that way. The better way is to be like, hey, I think you had an accident. I think you should change. And I've already put everything in the bathroom for you. Just go. Nobody will see you. I'm gonna stand here, distract everybody. You go. And they think, you know what, this person's got my back.
Right.
They may be my little brother, they may be my son, but you know what? They got my back. They've always, even in their moments of even in their moments. They still see that you're trying to help, and it is hard. You have to sometimes look between the lines, but it's there. It is there, and you have to remind yourself that a lot of the times it's not personal. They are not trying to be rude because they want to be rude. They're not trying to be mean because they want to be mean. They're they do see you as a small child,
Mhm.
and thus you have to come at them that way. You have to speak to them very respectfully. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. And it has nothing to do with you being an adult. It has to do with how they were raised, where they came from, how they were talked to, how they saw people talking to their elderly, because
Yeah.
that's in there, you know. So a lot of it has to do, it's heritage, it's who they are, how they grew up. If you know that this is them, this is them. Bring
Mhm.
them milk and sweet bread all day and they'll be happy, or find somebody in the family that they like and they'll be willing to speak with, because sometimes you got to work outside the zone, like Christopher said. The caregivers sometimes get a really good relationship with them, and it just doesn't work with you. But the caregiver will get them to take a shower. Who
Yeah.
knows why? You know, but those things that we lean into as needing help, or ideas of how do you get your father in the shower? They just will not take a shower. Why won't they take a shower? Well, there's many reasons. Many things happen. Probably when they were little, they didn't take showers. First,
Mhm.
that's one thing. Number two, it takes so much energy out of you to take a shower.
Mm.
Like, you're done for the day after a shower. Like, just this and washing, and you're like, "Oh, I can't do this no more." They will go take a nap all day long. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that, but it's a lot of energy. So they don't want to take a shower. They will lose their entire day, and they know that.
Wow.
It's so many things. But the caregiver will be like, "We're gonna
Let's
take a
go.
shower.
Yeah,
I've
we
got
can
your
shower now.
lunch. We're gonna go outside for a little walk, and thus better day."
Yeah,
So
right.
that's how you can maneuver with family members, especially.
And what you're talking about is those deep complexities because of their lived experience, which I want to talk about our lived experience and how that informs our caregiving strategy. But I do see we had a Q&A question that I wanted to bring to both of you, which is, how do the question says, how do I deal with the same questions over and over from a person who has dementia?
Yeah.
She is in a memory care unit and has a guardian. My mother calls me all the time asking the same questions over and over. I am an only child, so this falls all on me. Um, I'd like to start first and say, working with dementia patients, it's always important to be patient, meaning to, sometimes those questions are going to recycle and be over and over again. And making it fun, I kind of created a gamification because I also had a grandfather who went through that. And the gamification for me was making it a fun game where we're exploring that same question like a beginner every time, even though some of those questions are, "Hey, are you my son, Boo Boo?" That's what my grandfather used to call me, and it's like, yes, I know that guy. I'm him. And playing with that, as well as using music for dementia patients or even patients who are experiencing Alzheimer's, is really important. And the reason why I say making it a game and being patient is because when we respond with frustration, or maybe, even if it's not frustration, even if it's just agitation, they feel that, and it's scary. Think about how scary it is to be losing your memory, to not be able to recognize the people that you love most. It's a challenging and terrible path. But I want to, pose this question to the both of you. Starting with you, Christopher. How do you deal, with that? Maybe being asked the same questions over and over again.
Well, I think the beginner's mind approach, it can save us a lot of frustration, and it can actually open up pathways to bond deeper with those you care for, because for them it is the first time, and they are coming at it from a completely different mind state where if we recognize that maybe we're a little impatient, well, they're actually providing us an opportunity to practice greater patience and to be more present with ourselves and our emotions. And what I've come to experience, just like you mentioned earlier, Isabel, is correcting them never seems to work. It seems actually counterintuitive and counterproductive. So if they ask me a question, I'll play detective. I'll ask them questions and let's figure this out together. This is going to be a treasure hunt. Okay, surprise. I didn't know I was going on a scavenger hunt today, but here we are and we're going to do it together. And let's make the best out of it. So I think the beginner's mind approach was a big turning stone for me, and recognizing how I could stay in my center, honor the emotions that I'm feeling, but also realize where my father and those I'm working with are coming from, that correcting them was never a wise option.
Yeah.
Isabel, do you have anything to add to maybe how to approach supporting a family member with dementia?
Yeah. So I like kind of what you do, Dr. Dave, and Christopher too, the same thing. It's an adventure. It's a way to say to get another answer. Like, did you eat today? I did actually. Thank you. Did you eat today? You know what? I had some eggs today. Did you eat today? You know what? I made some eggs. I scrambled them. I put the seasoning in it. It's just a different way to answer them, and then to get answers from them. And not just that, but they can ask, I don't know, the same question over and over, right? But you can take it into different directions. Oh, really? So did you ever play a game when you were younger? Like, they're telling you about their youth or something, and you've heard the story 1,000 times. Oh, okay. Well, what kind of games did you play? Can you teach me one? Can they? Can we go back that far? Are they able to do something like that? Can they describe it to me? Sometimes they can. It's really cool. My grandfather described a game to me, but he wasn't talking about any of that stuff before, but through a conversation, we went there. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, I get to know them even more. And not just that, their heart, who they were, how they ate, what they wanted, what they like, all kinds of things. But it can be frustrating. Like, I just answered that question like 100 times. Why do I have to do this again? And to that, I say, let's just change the mindset of what's happening. Like Dr. Day says, they're losing who they are. They know something's wrong. They feel it, but they don't know what is wrong or why it's wrong, or why can't they remember, or if they called, or if they asked the same question. And so to them, it's like, I need to ask somebody. Somebody needs to answer my question right away, right now, right now, right now. And then it's gone. Right. But at the same time, if we change our mind on hearing their voice, on hearing what we could learn from them, stories that we didn't know happened. It can be hard when you're at work. It can be hard when you're trying to get something done in the day. But again, we have to think about it. At some point, we won't have those people anymore, and we won't have those questions anymore. And as much as it hurts, or as much as we're frustrated with it, it hurts to see them do this. A lot of the times it's like, I can't see my mom ask those questions 100 times. Or I can't do this anymore. They ask the same question 100 times. When they're gone, you will feel that loss of, I wish I could hear that question just one more 100th time, regardless. So when we get frustrated, we can practice those patience of, you know what? Thank you for calling, Mom. I know. I love you. The dog's fine. And then the dog's fine. And the dog's good. And yeah. And when you're working with other caregivers, say they're in a nursing home or something, you can also make maybe a notebook, a picture book with your picture, maybe some of those same questions that they ask you all the time, with the answers to those questions, like, are you my daughter? Picture of daughter, daughter's name,
Oh,
just
nice.
something to bring them comfort, anything. They like horses, bring them a bunch of pictures of horses, help them keep themselves occupied also will help with the 1,000 questions a day, the mundane
It
questions
will.
of every single day,
It
let
will because of purpose. Sorry to jump in
yes,
there, but I
yes.
recently saw they were talking about blue zones, I think they're called, where people are growing or living, past 100, later into their years. They talked about what is unique around all the blue zones, and one of the pieces was purpose. We talked about community. That's a piece too, obviously, nutrition, getting the right foods, but purpose. And even if that purpose is to I used to joke with my grandfather. I'm like, your purpose is to annoy me. And he like, yes, and your purpose is to lie in public and get paid for it. That's when he thought I was going to be a lawyer. So that's a totally
Ah,
different conversation. But but that when I joked with him about that, he liked to live in his purpose, which was to poke fun or just josh with me and have fun. And you talked,
Mhm.
Isabel, about professional when you're working with other professionals, how important is, and let me ask actually to you, Christopher, how important is your lived experience when it comes to supporting yourself and supporting others? Like, how important is that?
it's do I dare say it's everything? I mean, we're having these individuated experiences that nobody, even though they wish to empathize and they claim they can, nobody can know what another person is going through as badly as we wish we knew. We just don't know what's going on. We don't know the thought process. We don't know their emotional state, how they've suppressed emotions. There was
Mhm.
somebody who mentioned earlier in the chat about feeling afraid. They feel vulnerable too and scared at the same time. So their reactions are how they're feeling many times. And from Paula, and that that's so true. And that's where we can begin to practice greater empathy and greater compassion for their experience, and realizing maybe they, as much as they would want to be back to who they were, and we would love to see that as well, that's just not a realistic goal, so to speak. And I would actually even say, in my experience of working as a therapist and now on the caregiving side of things professionally, therapy is all about helping the person become more independent, doing things on their own. Whereas
Mhm.
caregiving is you're doing things for them. I've kind of found this mesh of the two where you can kind of create a hybridized model where you can actually work with them on the things that are most important to them so that they can do them as independently as possible while just providing the supports. Like you said, Isabel, I got the clothes set up. We're going to go do this. Provide that clear pathway with as few obstructions and distractions as possible so that they can actually feel a sense of accomplishment and purpose in their life of realizing, wow, I can take a shower on my own. And it's okay that it takes me 45 minutes to get my clothes on, but at least I did it. And at least I'm able to put my belt on straight and I can walk out of the house feeling put together.
Right.
It's like a scaffolding that I'm seeing that has to be approached if we're really wanting to support them in their greatest capacity.
Yes, yes. And celebrating small wins. You put your sock on. I would think it was a Super Bowl. If you put the sock on, it's be a big cheerleader, because when you're doing that, you're also cheerleading yourself because you're there witnessing this. You're there providing that support in the moment. I know we're coming down to the last few moments here of this Connect event. I feel like we can continue this conversation. It's important for us to share these experiences with each other, just so we know that we're not alone. Caregiving can be one of the most challenging, if not one of the most challenging, uh, professions and things that humans do for each other, because we're giving our all, cognitively, physically, lifting people up, strategically, we're giving people our all, but we have to replenish our tanks at times and take those breaks, as I mentioned earlier. So if there are any other questions, I encourage you, please pop them in the Q&A. We'd love to answer them as we begin to wrap up here. But I do want to ask you both a question about just your experience. I love the Memo put, I love the scaffolding metaphor. I love it too, because it's important. You're kind of like iterating a little bit. You're like, all right, we successfully did this. What can we do next? But I wanted to ask you as we close, what what is some of the joy that you get out of caregiving? Let's start with you, Isabel. What's some of the joy that you get out of caregiving?
Knowing that I brought some sort of peace to somebody's day.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just being there. Um, I mean, sometimes you're not even there to do much, but to be knowledge. Real quick, I'll make it really, really quick. I had a client that I took care of that I was there for his father, but I think I was really there for his son because his father was actively passing away, and his son was not ready for that to happen, and was sure that his father was going to make it and get better, but his dad was like 94, I believe. So there was no real way of this being true, right? So my time there was only to be for the son to say, you know what? You've had such a blessing. I cannot believe what it would have been like to have my dad for 94 years. You know, my dad passed away. He was almost 59. So, no, yeah. And so him seeing that, hearing that perspective kind of brought him back, to wow, my dad was pretty old. And just me being there of, you can do this. This is going to be okay. He's had such wonderful care because you've been here. Had so many memories with him. I mean, you did so much with him. I can't even imagine the time that you spent with him, all the things you did, you learned, you celebrated life together. And then when it came time that his father passed away, he was okay.
Mm,
So to me, just just that, just
mm.
being there for somebody, regardless of whatever it is, that.
I feel joyful just hearing about it. What about you, Christopher? What brings you joy about caregiving?
Hearing you speak, Isabel, about your role as a death doula and really coming full circle in this cycle of life, and my recent witnessing of my mom actively transitioning and the reunification that she uh, experienced and being reunited with her mother and father just before she took her final breath, that showed me just how miraculous and temporary of an experience this human experience actually is, and that
Right.
we're here bearing witness not only to our own transformation but all of those around us. And it's so dynamic, the emotions that come in, and the recollections, and the grief cycles, which are here to be honored and here to be recognized. It's all here for our growth and our development and our enrichment, and ultimately just our love. And so in witnessing not just my own parents go through their process, but many others, working as an occupational therapist and communicating with the family, being able to assure them that what this process is going through or what's occurring is very natural, and that it's safe to feel the grief and the flood of emotions that are coming forth. That can make a world of difference for people that maybe have never heard words such as "it's safe to feel." And it could just be as simple as that: it's safe to feel what you're feeling right now, and I will bear witness to your feelings.
Yes, I like that. Bear witness to their feelings, and there's so much that we can do just by being aware, just by being there, and like you said, bearing witness, and then judgment. Whatever they're feeling, that's fine. Go with that. You're feeling, despondent. You're feeling a little excited. Go with that. Whatever you're feeling is okay. And I love that you mentioned this human experience. We are all these beings having a human experience. And as I stated at the top, it can get complicated. But I appreciate everyone being here today. And before we end, I do want to thank you both for providing your knowledge, providing your expertise, and your shared and lived experience. I believe it's going to help others. And just as a quick surprise, I'm just going to turn all these lights behind me into hearts. And now, with that, everyone, I hope you all can go with love and continue to care for yourself, care for others, and we'll see you next time on the next Life Guides Connect. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.